Good morning, guys. Graham here from We Are Racing. It's the name of our channel. And I need to start this video off with a little bit of a story. A very good friend of mine started building this Lotus 7 quite a few years ago. And the project had put an ice on account of him building his house a few weeks ago. I phoned him up and I said to him, listen, why don't we take the Lotus out of storage and complete the project? I didn't think that he would quite take me seriously, but he did. And a couple of weeks later, here we are, one Lotus 7 Birkin. Now, you might wonder why a Birkin, because many of you will know this car as the Lotus 7 Caterham. Quick little bit of history. Lotus developed this car as the Lotus 7, but didn't actually produce very many of them as original Lotus. In fact, they sold the rights to produce the car to two different companies. The one in England, which if you buy it from there, you will buy yourself a Lotus 7 Caterham, and a company here in South Africa, in Pinetown, and if you buy it from here, it's called a Lotus Birkin. So we received this car in spares. There's no manual, there's no guide, there's no anything available anywhere, specifically not on YouTube. We looked for videos a lot on YouTube and there's almost nothing. A few videos with guys showing pictures of their progress, but no explanations of what they're actually doing. So this is really Meccano for adults, if you think about it. What we decided to do is we're going to document as much as we can, and specifically the issues that we're running into with this particular build. Now, as I said, we received the car in spares, very many spares. The engine was stripped down. It was a rolling chassis, and I'll post some pictures later on as part of this edit to show you what it is that we received. And effectively what we're busy with now is the initial test fit of everything, and that's a bit of a funny story as well, because almost everybody that walks in here says, when are you starting the thing? The process is quite tedious. What we're busy with at the moment is we're doing a test fit of absolutely everything. So everything needs to go in the car: lights, wiring, the motor, exhaust, air intakes, absolutely everything. And the purpose of that is to make sure that everything fits, number one, and number two, to see where we run into issues so that we can identify those issues, make a plan around those issues, sort out the issues. Then we will do a complete tear down, and then you start with the actual assembly of the car. At this point, we will start torquing up bolts, making sure that we put Loctite on the places where they're supposed to be Loctite, and actually do the final fitting of everything. So to ask me, when will the car start? We probably, right now, I'm going to guess 15 to 20% into the build. And we have a decent rolling chassis with almost everything connected. We have run into a few problems, and I'm going to try and explain those to you now. Right, so I think it's pertinent to start with just telling you about our specific build. As mentioned before, this is the Lotus 7 Birkin chassis, which is the one that's built in South Africa. We've recently learned that Birkin in South Africa, they were situated in Pinetown, has subsequently closed their doors, which is a bit sad, but I can tell you from what we've learned so far that the Lotus community in South Africa is vast, and it would appear around the world as well. So very many private people making parts for the cars and reproducing a lot of stuff, but the original Birkin spares, like for instance at the back over there, there's like a little bootlet thing which came off when we transported the car, and it was subsequently destroyed. We actually can't get a new one from Birkin now, and it is quite expensive to replace. But we'll work around it. We'll probably put a tarp on there and not worry about it too much. So our car comes with, or we decided to fit it with, a Toyota 20 valve 1600 motor. Now that's the inline 4, as you can see, and it is fuel injected, and we've decided also to go with a throttle body setup. And just now I'll move to the other side of the car and show you the branches that we're doing over there. Interesting fact about these cars, they come with this fixed pedal box, and if you want a shorter or a taller person to drive the car, you have to adjust the pedal box. So for shorter people, you would move the pedals back, and you would move the pedals forward for longer people. That because, yes, well, there's not a hell of a lot of space inside here to fit seats that can move forwards and backwards, which is also quite interesting because you sit very close to the ground in these cars. The plan right now is to probably go with bucket seat setup, which I found a person locally that can actually make me these bucket seats, and I will, with his permission, I can't name him yet, but with his permission, I will share his details in these videos. What we've also done is, you can see this is the standard sort of dashboard setup, intended for a bunch of dials to give this car a bit of a classic flavor, so to speak. We've decided not to go with that setup. We're going with a complete electronic dashboard, and also then of course the aftermarket management system for this particular motor. And this is the setup that we're talking about. It is the Perfect Power X for X-ray, M for Mama, S for Sugar, 4B-4A Extreme Management System. And it comes with all kinds of interesting things, but what's most interesting about this is that the little wiring harness here is specifically made for this particular engine. So all of your connectors are pre-made up for the right length, the right size, absolutely everything that you need, including the injectors, the setup for the injectors, your throttle position sensors, absolutely everything just wired in perfectly, so you don't have to concern about those things. Moving on to the exhaust setup, and also probably one of the big issues that we're dealing with at the moment. So quite a fancy exhaust. This came with a kit. Stainless steel setup, very pretty looking branches. I will probably edit into this video a little insert of where we had to cut out that thing there and make it work. But this is also where we ran into our first major issues with the build. So if you look at the branch setup over there, there are two holes, and I'm not sure if you can see it. Yeah, there are two holes over there. You can use the top hole and the bottom hole. So when you set up this exhaust, when you install these branches, you have to start here from the right hand side or the back of the motor and move forwards. Otherwise these things just don't fit. It's quite difficult to get them to fit. But what you see over here is one of the water inlets for this motor. Now if you can imagine this motor sitting in its original car, you would have had a setup where the motor is also mounted like this, with the radiator basically being where I'm standing at right now, so away from the motor. So this wouldn't be a problem, because you've got the water inlet running from here across to the radiator, and then the return going around the other side. In this case though, it would appear it's a bit of a problem, because the exhaust mount over here now overlaps the water inlet there, so we can't get the original fitting to fit there. We will have to trim down that piece of manifold. The second problem now is that the moment you put that in there, and with the radiator sitting in the front of this car, we will need to run all of the water pipes past the front of the car over here, and that's also the kit that arrives with the car. Now stainless steel, not necessarily the best material to build exhausts from, on account that they keep heat. They retain heat very nicely. That makes them good and bad. Not an exhaust expert. Just my concern here being the heat. So again, I've spoken to a few people locally, and apparently they make a reverse water kit for this car. So what you do is you blank off this space, you blank off the thermostat and everything that sits at the back over here, and then reverse the flow of the water through the radiator, and that apparently works quite well. The next issue, also related to the exhaust, is that the oil filter lives in the back over here. And now I can't get this camera to turn. Right, that's the oil filter over there. The oil filter lives behind this branch setup.
And that's the standard oil filter setup still. So the oil filter would screw onto the front over here, and as you can quite clearly see there, there's no space. There's no space for the oil filter to go there. Originally, we thought we would go with an external oil pump, and then of course just relay the oil from there. And for that, there was a very nice bracket that we could actually buy. It looks like this. This oak screws into the place of the oil filter on the motor over there, and then you've got these pipes here that you can attach to move it to a separate oil filter that then lives elsewhere on the car. That also doesn't fit. And that, in addition to the really, really big problem, which is there are very few aftermarket proper oil filters available. This oak cost an absolute bundle. And if you look at the front of the motor over here, you've already got so little space. Keeping in mind that when we look at this motor over here, we still need to fit an alternator in this space as well. Now, I've already made the bracket for that, but then, and this is a tip as well, I realized that we should have fitted that alternator bracket at least before we actually started putting the motor inside here. Okay, so that's definitely a tip there. Do fit the alternator bracket before you put the motor into the car, specifically this motor obviously, as the moment you have the motor inside here, the motor mount, which lives down there, let me see if I can focus on that, the motor mount, yeah, that's not happening. The motor mount that lives down there actually goes over the bolt that that you need to attach the bracket for the alternator onto. Right, moving along to the next top tip that we can give you. As we were fitting the motor, obviously one of the things that we needed to figure out was these engine mountings and how exactly they were going to fit. And this took quite a bit of doing. A tip: do not put any washers in between any of these spaces over here between the motor or anything. I was originally concerned that the setup was going to be too rigid, but I'm assured that that's the way it's supposed to run. Don't put any washers there because you're literally working with absolute millimeters here. When we fitted this engine mounting, so now I'm standing in front of the car, I'm looking to the left of the motor. When we fitted this particular engine mounting, we battled for some time to get the front one of the two nuts to go into the motor, and then we realized, oh my goodness, that's just not going to happen on account of the hole being too small. Now, this was a problem because we previously removed the nut that was actually in there, and we achieved this by putting another nut on top of that one and unscrewing it, because it was sort of in the way. And of course, when we tried to screw our nut into that place, there wasn't sufficient space for it. So we went ahead and we actually drilled out the hole, tapped new thread for it, and fitted a bolt in there that's the same size and shape of all the other bolts that we fitted to the car. This is not the best way to do it. We had to also subsequently drill out the hole on the actual engine mounting to make it fit. So clearly it was designed to go over that standard nut and actually just bolt down with the standard nut. Now that's similar to the nut that we showed you on the other side, where the alternator needs to go on. It also has a nut that's already sitting inside the motor. So obviously someone else had already battled with it, and we, in our collective wisdom, decided that needed to change, which it didn't. It really didn't need to change. Right, guys, so that's going to be a wrap for today's video, which is really the first part of the intro on our work and build. With the next video, I would like to get underneath the car and also explain a couple of other things that we battled with. I'll also get into the lights, I will get into wiring and all sorts of things. There's also a couple of videos that I would like to post for comment, because a couple of things we don't know how to do. But yeah, support us by liking the channel, subscribe, hit the notification button please. It's really important for us from a YouTube point of view to get both subscribers and likes on the video. So help us. We can maybe help and give back to the community if we get sufficient support. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.